Greetings fellow gamers, I'm the Soulsborne Seeker and today I'll be giving my first impressions on Twilight Monk, a fantasy Metroidvania game that's being developed by Aquatic Moon Games and expected to come out sometime in spring of 2025 for PC and Nintendo Switch. My preview will cover the first hour and 45 minutes of the game, which was what I experienced during a public playtest that was available from the 30th of January to the 2nd of February 2025, so here you'll get to hear about everything I got to go hands-on with, as well as certain things I can speculate on based on what I saw. The story of Twilight Monk is based on the series of books by the same name and follows Raziel, a young monk living in the Monastery of Crescent Island, a place that is part of the land of Speria. Soon the realm finds itself threatened by total eradication after Nox, a traitor among the ranks of the monks, escapes captivity and vows to release a creature known as the World Eater from its prison. To do that, Nox will need to find 3 rings which, once gathered, will release the monstrous entity and spell the end of Speria. Thus Raziel goes on a quest against time to find the rings first and keep his world from dying. Narrative progression transpires mainly through dialogue, which does a great job of properly informing you about the lore of Speria as well as the stakes of your current predicament, while also breathing life into the various wonderfully portrayed characters you'll come across, each one phenomenally unique in terms of visual design but also personality. Though I only got to see a fraction of it, the narrative does seem quite straightforward, but I reserve judgment until I've experienced it in its entirety. That being said, the game does an incredible job when it comes to its world building. Aside from my previous praise for its characters, I cannot begin to describe how beautiful and diverse the locations I got to traverse were, with Twilight Monk's phenomenal art style giving each biome a distinct identity by drenching them in wonderful details that tell stories of their own. From the warm coziness of the starting village to the frosty tundras of Arcturo, all the way to the foreboding malice of the catacombs beneath Rottingburg, each place I got to visit felt unique and ripe for exploration, with each nook and cranny seemingly holding eons of history hidden within. Speaking of exploration, the way Twilight Monk has you move about its world is interestingly novel, since it borrows elements from classic JRPGs. More specifically, the game has an overview map which you use to move around in isometric fashion, similar to RPGs like Final Fantasy VII, and through which you get to visit various points of interest, at which point the game turns to the classic side-scrolling Metroidvania view. Said isometric perspective can also extend to some more specialized areas than the overview map, such as your starting village. Now, while in this isometric view during map traversal, you will occasionally see foes appear and come your way, and if they reach you, they'll pull you into an arena where you'll get to either fight them or flee, which is another element borrowed from classic JRPGs. At the beginning I thought this mechanic might be a bit detrimental to momentum, but that fear quickly dissipated once I realized that you can easily avoid these creatures if you don't want to fight, and also discovered that sometimes being reached by them might lead you to treasure instead of a fight, thus introducing a welcome element of unpredictability into the mix. However, as I said, once you get to a point of interest, the game brings you to familiar Metroidvania territory, exploration, ability gates, combat, and the like. Staying a bit on exploration, my time with Twilight Monk revealed many different collectibles that the game makes available for you to obtain. The ones I experienced firsthand were spirit fragments, ember stones, mystic arts, talismans, and spider gems. Spirit fragments increase your overall health when gathered in groups of 3, while each ember stone collected raises your ember energy pool by 10 points. Mystic arts are special attacks you can equip, which can then be utilized at the cost of ember energy in order to take down enemies in various ways. Talismans correspond to trinkets you can equip in order to gain certain advantages, such as a stronger range of attack or the ability to cause damage while sliding, of which you can have up to 7 equipped at any given moment, though only 1 slot is available at the start of the game and the rest need to be unlocked. Finally, spider gems are blue precious stones you obtain by destroying certain spiders that hide across the map, which can then be exchanged for certain rewards, though said rewards are a mystery since I didn't find the NPC necessary for said exchange during the demo. Now, aside from the above collectibles, I also noticed slots for summons and a potion in the game's menu, but I didn't find any during my playthrough. However, it is safe to assume that summons refer to certain entities you can call forth forth to either cause damage to enemies or receive certain benefits, and the potion is most likely going to be used to heal you or give you some kind of buff, though this is mere speculation and I could very well be wrong. I should also mention that the game has a monster hunting system available, where you essentially need to kill certain numbers of enemies and then turn in any completed hunts to an NPC for various rewards, including extra talisman slots. With all of the aforementioned optional content to find, it is a good thing that Twilight Monk features a serviceable fast travel system in the form of magical gates you can use to travel between biomes, so there's that as well. If there is one sour note to point out in relation to the game's exploratory aspect, that would definitely be the map overview. More specifically, the map of each biome feels somewhat lacking in terms of the information it provides, at least in the version I experienced. First and foremost, it doesn't show you any collectibles you may have come across, but instead gives you an overall estimate of how many of them remain on that specific biome, which is definitely something, but still doesn't really help with knowing the location of each one. This becomes even more problematic by the fact that you cannot place manual markers on the map, at least to the extent seen during the demo. Finally, the map doesn't show you the exact location of yourself on it, but rather highlights the room you're currently in, which might not sound like a big deal but could turn confusing in situations where a room is larger than average. The map does pinpoint save locations, boss rooms, and merchants, and you can also purchase maps from merchants which reveal unexplored rooms on each biome, so there is some information present here, but I do believe the aforementioned issues need to be addressed to elevate its functionality. In terms of combat, Twilight Monk is serviceable, though it doesn't go the extra mile or do anything new. Your basic attacks are performed by using the large pillar strapped across your back, which you throw at enemies to cause damage in semi-ranged fashion. Said pillar can also be planted on the ground and kicked at your foes, as well as utilized to press buttons or reach higher ground in said form when it comes to non-battle capabilities. Using the pillar to attack was definitely satisfying, though I would have liked to be able to hit vertically as well, since quite a few enemies were flying and I had to bring myself to their level to hit them, which did break momentum a bit. Pillar aside, you will also get to use the aforementioned mystic arts, which allow you to unleash special attacks such as throwing magic-infused daggers and axes at your enemies at the expense of ember energy, though I'll admit I rarely used those since I found the pillar to be much more powerful, especially since it got increasingly stronger as I leveled up, which happens through combat and was another RPG element of Twilight Monk that I really liked. I did mention previously that the game also has a summon system which I'm guessing will be combat oriented to an extent, but I can't really expand on that since I didn't get to experience it. Boss-wise, I thoroughly enjoyed my fights against the few big bads I faced in the demo. Their presentation was amazing, courtesy of the game's phenomenal art style, and their attack patterns were diverse, though I'll admit that overall I did find them to be leaning toward the easier side of things. I guess the best way to describe this is that I felt the big bads were kind of like glass cannons, meaning that they did considerable damage and most of their attacks needed good reflexes to be avoided, but they also lost health quite quickly, making my bouts with them short but hectic. As for difficulty, based on my demo experience, I'd situate Twilight Monk on the normal side of things, offering a reasonable challenge while still being manageable, with both enemies and bosses capable of taking you down if you're not careful, but not in any way that felt unfair. In conclusion, I had a ton of fun while playing the demo of Twilight Monk. I thought the visuals were sublime, combat was fun and to the point, exploration was engaging, the RPG traversal was appropriately nostalgic, and the bosses were quite entertaining. I would have liked to be able to hit vertically and not just horizontally. The map does need a few quality of life improvements to be considered spot on, and the bosses could be tweaked a bit to provide more of a challenge, but overall, Twilight Monk seems like it's going to be a solid entry in the genre, and one I'm really looking forward to playing to completion. What are your thoughts on Twilight Monk? Had you heard about it before this preview? Are you planning to try it out when it becomes available? Let me know in the comments below, and please subscribe if you enjoyed this video. As always, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, Soulsborne Seeker out!